Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the 2024 Genesis Scottish Open. This is honestly one of my favorite events on the PGA Tour schedule to watch. Personally, I love links golf, and I love when the best golfers in the world are forced to play links golf. And don't get me wrong, this is not me bashing the PGA Tour, but I feel like the PGA Tour schedule can get a little homogenous with the types of golf courses and types of tests that these golfers see on a week in and week out basis in the States. And so I absolutely love that they're heading on across the pond for 2 weeks to take on the Scottish Open and then the Open Championship next week. And we're just going to see a different type of golf, one that I very much enjoy watching, and I very much would love to get over to the British Isles and play at some point in my lifetime. Now, before we get started with the actual picks and preview, I do want to mention that this is going to be a very busy week for us here at Mike's Money Picks. This is a big stretch of golf coming up these next few weeks. So tomorrow night, we are going to be here back on the podcast talking about the ISCO Championship, formerly known as the Barbasol Championship, which is the alternate event taking place in the United States this week. And then Wednesday, we're going to be talking about Live Andalusia, the live event taking place at Valderrama Golf Course. And then Thursday, we're going to be breaking down the Pup Cup, which, if you are uninitiated, sounds like a best in show competition, but it's actually Underdog's best ball contest for the FedEx Cup playoffs. We're going to be breaking down that format and how you can win at Underdog drafts for the FedEx Cup playoffs on Thursday night. And then on Friday night, we have our Open Championship preview coming out. It's going to be a little bit early than what you're used to, but it's because I am going on vacation on Saturday with literally 18 members of my family. So I do not think I'm going to have space or time to record next week. So we're going to get the Open Championship preview out early. So that way, I can still get on the podcast, still talk about it. And, it will not interfere with me or anybody else's vacation plans. Now, lastly, before we dive into the preview, I do want to mention the John Deere Classic was a great week for us. We had an outright bet on Davis Thompson. I did have an each-way bet on Eric Cole. I was confronted with a math problem on Saturday night on whether or not to cash out or let it ride both the Davis Thompson and Eric Cole slips, and I could have cashed them out for a slight loss from what I could have gotten if Davis Thompson won. So I did end up making the right decision. I had a lot of thinking to do about it, and at the end of the day, it's just like, you know what? I could cash these out right now, or I'm pretty strongly convinced that Davis Thompson is going to win this golf tournament, and I do not need to overthink that too much. So let it ride, and definitely made the right decision as Davis Thompson did pull through for us. In DFS, it was also a very profitable week because we had a ton of Thompson, ton of Cole, ton of McCarthy. As I mentioned on the show last week, I knew going in that Thompson and McCarthy were going to be highly owned, but I did not really care because what I was able to do was I was able to have a ton of Thompson, McCarthy, Cole, Silverman starts to my lineup where I just pieced together the other two pieces from there, and it ended up working out with a few different lineups that ended up reaching a decent payday. Only one member of my core ended up missing the cut, which was David Skins. If he had made the cut, it would have been an even better week, but it still ended up being a pretty good week nonetheless. All right, so let's go ahead and end the introduction there. Let's go ahead and start talking about golf in Scotland. That was my best Scottish accent. It was not great, I know. So before we get started, I do want to mention, if you are new here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on YouTube and subscribe to the audio feed if you're listening on audio as well. And please hit the like button on YouTube. Helps me out a ton when you guys do that. And rate and review the audio. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the Renaissance Club. Before we continue, yes, I did pronounce it Renaissance Club. If you've ever watched the TV show How I Met Your Mother, which is back on Netflix, it's one of my all-time favorite sitcoms, of my lifetime. Ted Mosby character on there always pronounced it Renaissance, and I do believe that is correct pronunciation. And so what if it makes me sound a little bit bougie? I'm okay with that. I do think Renaissance is the correct pronunciation. So the Renaissance Club is a course in North Berwick. If anyone says North Berwick, then they probably don't know what they're talking about. North Berwick, Scotland. It is a par 70. It is almost 7,300 yards. However, this course does play a little longer than what the scorecard indicates. It has the unique distinction of having 5 par 3s and 3 par 5s. 2 of the par 3s are very short and are very gettable with a wedge or a short iron shot. And all of the par 5s are going to be reachable in 2 for most of the field. They're going to be very scoreable for most of the field. There is going to be 1 drivable par 4, especially depending on what direction the wind goes. If the wind is, in the right direction, you may even see a few par 4s get not necessarily drivable, but like distances to where you can drive right up next to the green and you're going to be pitching on for your second shot. Now, the Renaissance Club is a man-made links style course. So what I mean by that is this. This is not a course like St. Andrews or like Muirfield or Carnoustie that has been around for literally forever, and you feel like it's just naturally sculpted land. It's just like a naturally made golf course. The Renaissance Club was basically a forest for a long, long time until Tom Doak came in, bulldozed down a lot of forests, and kind of made a golf course. So it is a links course. It is designed with a links style and certainly is in a geographical location on the globe that promotes links golf, the northern coast of Scotland. But it is very man-made, and I don't want to say artificial, but like there's a few shots that do play like your kind of normal modern American aerial style. But it definitely is going to be a links field. It is definitely a links golf course, but I do not want to get it twisted. This is not St. Andrews or Carnoustie or Royal Liverpool or anywhere like that. Now, let's go ahead and talk about what we can expect here at the Renaissance Club. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm showing a video from Golf Digest. They have called Every Hole at the Renaissance Club, where they just kind of do a flyover of all 18 holes, talk about the architecture. I love the Golf Digest Every Hole at series. If you're interested in golf course architecture, check that out. Now, distance here at the Renaissance Club is going to be a big time advantage, but it is not required. The fairways are going to play super firm and fast. So if you are finding fairways, then you are going to be getting added distance from rollout. But the distance here is definitely an advantage. There are going to be a ton of driver holes. There's not really a whole lot of holes where you're going to be forced to lay up, not like last week at the John Deere Classic. This is going to be a hole where pretty much every par 4 and par 5 guys are going to be pulling from the driver bag and trying to hit it as far as they can. The fairways are quite wide, and there's not really a big punishment for missing it. There's not a whole lot of trees. There's a few holes that are tree lined. There's not a whole lot of water at all. There's a few pot bunkers that you can get in off the tee. The rough is not super penal. So with there not being that big of a penalty off the tee, guys are just going to be wailing away with driver every opportunity that they get. The greens themselves are above average size. They have historically been pretty difficult to putt on. Tom Doak generally designs his greens with a lot of character and a lot of undulation. Think about Memorial Park at Houston is another great example of this. And the fescue grass that these greens have for their surface tends to play very slow. The reason why is when you get windy conditions in Scotland, if the greens were much firmer and faster, then literally the ball would roll off the green before the golfers would be able to get up and mark it. That is why the greens traditionally play a little softer and a little slower when you're playing links style layouts in Scotland and the northern parts of England. Now, also, I think that this is a place where approach putting matters. It's going to be a part of my model this week. This is a course where, like a lot of link style courses, you are going to be able to putt from off the green. There are a lot of fairway grass runoff areas off the greens. There's a decent amount of bunkering, but there's definitely going to be the option that you're going to have to putt off the green. So if you're able to put your approach putts in close, whether you're on or off the green, you're going to be able to give yourself advantages because you're going to be avoiding the dreaded 3 putts. Now, weather is also going to play a huge factor this week. The winning scores at this course have a wide range. It can get down to as low as -20 to as high as -7 when Xander Schauffele won in 2022. Last year, the weather was quite docile for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then on Sunday, the wind really picked up and there was just carnage all over the place. Last Sunday on Underdog, last year on the Sunday round, Underdog had not yet really figured out golf props. And so I just did a bunch of bogey or worse, strokes higher props on a lot of guys on Underdog last Sunday. I keep saying last year for Sunday's round. And it was just printing money because, all these guys were out there in ridiculous winds. They just had no chance at scoring well. And it was just really easy props to hit. So whether you're playing Showdown DFS, whether you are playing props, check the weather before the day starts. And also, if you're playing DFS or betting this week, check the weather before the tournament starts. You could end up having a weather wave that has an advantage. In fact, I believe that's quite likely to happen on Thursday and Friday. However, I will say, recording this on Monday night, the weather looks pretty docile for the whole weekend. So maybe we get a good weekend where this course plays a little bit easier. But just know that depending on how the weather turns out, this course has the potential to play super difficult or super easy. Now, with this being a Tom Doak design, the only other course on the PGA Tour that is a Tom Doak design is Memorial Park home or host of the Houston Open. And also, like I said, if you're playing those weather waves in DFS, wait until Wednesday to make your lineups. That will kind of be the best way that you can predict that out. You'll have the most accurate picture for the weather. Now, in terms of course history here, the DP World Tour hosted the Aberdeen Scottish Open here from 2019 to 2021. The last 2 years, the Scottish Open has been a co-sanctioned event with the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour, and you have seen elite level fields here in each of the last 2 years. And so course history here can be tracked for any of the last 5 years. And in terms of all the course history for the last 5 years, the best in this field has been Tom Kim, who's been 3rd and 6th in his 2 appearances here. Benny On, who finished 3rd here last year. Tommy Fleetwood, probably I would crown as the course history king. He has played here 4 out of a possible 5 times and finished 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 26th. Xander Schauffele owns a win here, as well as a 42nd and a 10th place finish in the last 3 years. Max Homa has a sneaky good history here, T16 and T12. Lee Hodges, a T12 last year. Rory McIlroy, a T34, a cut and a win. Stuart Sink, 1 T24. Wyndham Clark, back-to-back top 25s, T16, T25. Andrew Putnam, T4th and T42. And then rounding out the top 10, Matt Fitzpatrick has played here all 5 possible years, 14th, 42nd, 2nd, and 6th, and then ended it with a missed cut last year. Those are your course history guys this week. Now, in terms of the key stats for the Renaissance Club, strokes gained approach is always going to matter, but I do think that it matters a little bit less this week than it would on a normal week. But it is still going to make my key stats list. Strokes gained off the tee and total driving are going to be 2 of the stats that I look at for off the tee play. I also want to look at strokes gained putting on slow greens. With there being 5 par 3s on this course, I want there to be a look at par 3 scoring. And then I also want to see performance in windy conditions and performance on the British Isles in tournaments that are in England, Scotland, and Ireland. I want to see a good track record of that in guys that I'm looking at this week. Now, honestly, what that boils down to me is this is a driver putter week. This is not a week where approach play is going to be the determining factor. This is a week where you can be super effective with your driver, get it on the green, be super effective with your putter, and that is your path to victory. With there being very minimal penalty off the tee, with there being a great reward for distance off the tee, I do think that driver putter is a combination I'm looking for this week. And when you look at the historic winners here, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele, Minwoo Lee, I mean, that kind of tracks, right? Great drivers of the golf ball, can be great putters. They're not necessarily great putters every week, but they do have the potential to be great putters of the golf ball. Now, in terms of comps courses, I want to look at all links courses. That is, again, all the courses in the British Isles. You can include Pebble Beach. You can include Trinity Forest, which hosted the AT&T Byron Nelson in that as well. But in terms of stateside courses, Memorial Park, the other Tom Doak design, another driver putter type course. Quail Hollow, in Charlotte, North Carolina, much different agronomy, but it's a driver putter type course. And oh, by the way, look at who the last pairing was this year. It was Rory McIlroy and Xander Schauffele, the last 2 winners here at the Renaissance Club. And then Hamilton Golf and Country Club, I think, is another one you could look at that is a driver and putter course. Look at the winner here. It was Robert McIntyre, who was 2nd in this tournament last year. And in 2019 at Hamilton, it was Rory McIlroy who won the Scottish Open last year. So that is all that we need to know here about the course. Let's go ahead and break it down and take a look at the rabbit hole. Now, I almost forgot the name for a second there, but I am referring to the rabbit hole, which is a tool from BetSperts Golf that has helped me a ton this year. And there's so many different conditions and filters you can put on the rabbit hole that will allow you to kind of pick and choose the exact type of unique skill set that you're looking for in any given week. It'll also allow you to build a custom model that will allow you to kind of weight different stats and just really narrow down what golfers you want to target in a given week. And it's opened my eyes to a lot of different guys that would not have been in my DFS player pools if I did not have access to the tool here at the rabbit hole. Now, the one thing I will say, my one complaint about the rabbit hole is they do not have really a lot of DP World Tour stats. So with this being a co-sanctioned event, you're going to see a ton of DP World Tour players in this field. We're going to talk about a few of them here later in the episode, but just know that the stats for them are not really going to show up on the custom model, kind of like how the stats for the live guys aren't really going to show up all that well when the live guys do show up for the majors. Now, I do want to go ahead and break down what we looked at this week here in the rabbit hole. And so the first stat that I wanted to look at, though, that I find to be very important this week is strokes gained total in the UK and Ireland, aka the British Isles, in the last 5 years, who have been the best players at those types of courses. And the top 10 in the field have been McIlroy, Fleetwood, Tom Kim, Jordan Spieth, Brian Harman, Xander Schauffele, Victor Hovland, Robert McIntyre, Benny On, and Colin Morikawa. Flip it over to Links Golf Design, and it's really going to be a similar list. Like I said, you're going to only include a few more courses that are stateside on that list. And the top 10 in the field for that are Fleetwood, Spieth, Tom Kim, McIlroy, Morikawa, Nick Taylor, Victor Hovland, Robert McIntyre, Xander Schauffele, and Max Homa. Now, I did look at my American comps, the three that we talked about, Memorial Park, Quail Hollow, and Hamilton Golf and Country Club. And the best guys in the field on those courses have been McIlroy, Schauffele, Corey Connors, Aaron Rai, Tommy Fleetwood, Mackenzie Hughes, Victor Perez, Ben Griffin, Victor Hovland, and Hideki Matsuyama. Lastly, I wanted to look at just the Renaissance Club, who have been the top players in the field at the Renaissance Club, which is the exact same list that we talked about from earlier, but weighted slightly differently because it's only looking at the last 2 years. So the top 10 in this field have been Tom Kim, that is, McIlroy, Fleetwood, Schauffele, McIntyre, Benny On, Homa, Kitayama, Jordan L. Smith, not to be confused with any of the other Jordan Smiths. Apparently, it's really giving me Stephen A. Smith vibes, the fact that they're naming him Jordan L. Smith, and then Jason Scrivener rounding out the top 10. Now, I also wanted to look at strokes gained in windy conditions, which the wind can kind of be a little bit of a fluky stat, but the rabbit hole does a pretty good job of filtering out what exactly qualifies as windy and what doesn't. So I do trust this number. It is something that I am going to weight a little bit in my model this week. And the top 10 in that regard are Sungjae Im, followed by McIlroy, Griffin, Mitchell, Bezadenhout, Thegawa, Denny McCarthy, Justin Thomas, Adam Hadwin, Billy Horschel, and Xander Schauffele for the top guys there. Next, I want to look at strokes gained off the tee in general, who have been the best strokes gained off the tee players in the calendar year 2024. You've got McIlroy, Mitchell, Minwoo Lee, Kevin Yu, Oberg, Schauffele, Spieth, Morikawa, Siwoo Kim, and Victor Hovland. Now, when you flip it on over to driver-heavy courses with a low missed fairway penalty, the list switches just a little bit. You've got McIlroy, Oberg, Mitchell, Schauffele, Thompson, Minwoo Lee, Victor Hovland, List, Kevin Yu, and Benny On. Now, I also wanted to throw in just a little bit in there because I do think it will be an advantage this week driving distance. You've got Richard Mansell. I don't know where his data is coming from. Maybe he played in, I know he's a DP World Tour guy, but maybe he played in one of the majors, and that's where he's getting his stat from. Minwoo Lee, Benny On, Chris Gotterup, Sam Stevens, and then kind of the typical characters that you think of when you think of for bombers. Mitchell, McIlroy, Fox, Clark, Vincent Norman rounding out the top 10. If you go on over to total driving, I do think that's a stat that you can look at this week as well. It takes a little bit more accuracy into account as well as distance. Minwoo Lee, McIlroy, Oberg, Tom McKibben, Xander Schauffele, Spieth, Mansell, Connors, Jordan L. Smith, and Austin Eckroat rounding out the top 10. Now, I also wanted to look at just strokes gained approach in 2024. Like I said, it's not the most important stat this week, but you don't just want to throw it out because strokes gained on approach, generally speaking, week in and week out, is the most predictive stat on the PGA Tour. Tom Hoge, Keith Mitchell, Corey Connors, Xander Schauffele, Aaron Rai, Ludwig Oberg, Kevin Yu, Lucas Glover, Siwoo Kim, and Doug Gim, top 10 in this field. Now, with there being two long par threes and with the par fives being very scoreable, long approaches are going to be important this week. So the best guys in the field in terms of the 175 to 100 or to 200 yard bucket are Jordan L. Smith, Aaron Cockerell, Nikolai Højgaard, Dylan Fratelli, and Hideki Matsuyama. Probably small sample size on some of those guys. If you make it 200 yards plus, you've got Jordan Gumberg, Yuto Katsuragawa, Sebastian Soderberg, Rikuya Hoshino, and Jasper Svensson as the top 5. That does end up being an awfully odd list. So maybe small sample size is helping some of those guys out there as well. Now, I also want to look at putting on fescue greens. Which are basically the greens that you're going to see in the British Isles. And you see a lot of kind of linksy type specialists on this list. You've got Scrivener, Grant Forrest, Callum Hill, Bezadenhout, Tom Kim, Tommy Fleetwood, McIntyre, Hodges, Gim, Morikawa rounding out the top 10. I also want to look at strokes gained putting on slow greens because, maybe if you haven't made the trip over to British Isles, they are going to be slow greens to putt on this week. In the top 10 in that category, Bezadenhout, Scrivener, Forrest, Hoagie, Fleetwood, Garnett, Hubbard, Callum Hill, Justin Lower, and Seamus Power. Now, I also wanted to look at approach putting proximity because, with there being a putting from off the green option, as well as these greens having a ton of character, how closely you can put your first putt is going to greatly influence your ability to save par on some of these holes. And so the top 10 are Yuto Katsuragawa popping up again, followed by Tristan Lawrence. I do believe that is pronounced Tristan. Followed by Novak, Soderberg, Patrick Harrington, Taylor Moore, Zalatoris, Tom Kim, Luke Donald, and Lucas Glover. And then with there being 5 par 3s this week, I did want to put an emphasis on par 3 average. Best players in the field on par 3s, Jordan L. Smith, Dylan Fratelli, Jordan Gumberg, Jesper Svensson, Sammy Valimaki, Kevin Yu, Andrew Novak, Xander Schauffele, Sam Stevens, and Thomas Dietrich. Quite the eclectic group there. Now throw all that into a model. And the top of the board came as zero surprise to me, who I ended up getting, who I believe the 2 top players in the field are quite clearly ended up being 1 and 2 of my models. Xander Schauffele 1 and Rory McIlroy 2. I think to nitpick the order between those 2 is useless. I think they're both clearly the top 2 players on the field. And the order really does not matter. I'm going to be playing a lot of both of them in DFS. Now 3 was Keith Mitchell, which surprised me a little bit, but he's a great off the tee player. And so when you prioritize off the tee, then that's when he's going to show up. He also tends to play great at the courses that Rory McIlroy plays great at. We've talked about this numerous times on the podcast. So it does not surprise me when Rory pops up in a model that Keith Mitchell does as well. The rest of the top 10, Corey Connors, Tommy Fleetwood, Benny On, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Tom Kim, and Robert McIntyre, with Oberg, Fitzpatrick, Jordan L. Smith, Max Homa, and Wyndham Clark rounding out the top 15. Is there anybody in terms of their salary that really stands out? Minwoo Lee did not model well at all. Neither did Sung J M or Davis Thompson. Denny McCarthy did not model well. Trying to see if there's any diamonds in the rough here. Kurt Kitayama ended up pretty good. Ben Griffin ended up pretty good. Victor Perez and Kevin Yu, Doug Gim all ended up pretty good. Okay, so that was just my first run through the model. What I do every week is I kind of end up tinkering with this model. So if you want to know who makes the top 10 of my final model, as well as my DFS course for both DraftKings as well as FanDuel, and a full write-up on why I am playing them and how I got to my model, head on over to my Patreon, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks. You get one of those full articles with the model top 10, the core, and the write-up every week for the PGA Tour, any alternate events, and any live events. And with there being an alternate event and a live event this week and an alternate event next week, you're going to be getting your money's worth if you go ahead and subscribe to 1 month of the Patreon. And then you'll also get access to all of our best ball tools for NFL and college. And then once the NFL and college football regular season start, you're going to get access to those DFS scores as well. Also, if you ever want to talk about a specific player, ask me anything. My Twitter's at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have on Twitter. And then also, if you're looking for a community to talk DFS with, the Fantasy Corner Discord is where I'm at. Link is in the description. I cannot recommend that enough as well. All right, so now we talked about the course, we talked about the stats. Let's go ahead and take a look at the board and see who we like this week. To me, sitting at the top of the board this week is a clear 2-horse race where you have the clear 2 best golfers in the field in Rory McIlroy and Xander Schauffele. And if you're going to be betting either of them, then I think you kind of have to, in terms of thinking about how to mathematically construct a betting card, I do think that you have to pick one or the other if you're going to be outright betting. But I think from a DFS perspective, I think you can play one of them. I think there's actually enough value down with us having a 5K range that you can play both of them. If you click both of them into your lineup on DraftKings, you have an average remaining salary of $6,600, which is certainly doable this week with that 5K range. That's actually going to be something that I'm going to try. But I cannot stress enough how I think these are, by and large, the 2 best players in the field, significantly better than the rest of the field, significantly more likely to win than the rest of the field. I think if I were to want to bet either of these 2 guys, though, I mentioned here that pretty much every week I do a top 20 parlay, at least 1, sometimes 2 or 3. I did hit last week. I had Seamus Power, Denny McCarthy, and Davis Thompson. But to me, these would be guys that I would put in a top 20 parlay. I think it's very likely that both these guys end up in the top 10 or top 20 of this tournament. And then you know you don't really have to pick one or the other if you want to do it that way. Now, let's go ahead and talk about both of them more specifically. Rory McIlroy coming in incredible recent form. Look, I do not want to try to be a psychologist, but if you just told me heading into this week, if I was not near a TV or paying any attention to golf for the last 3 weeks, and you just told me that Rory McIlroy was coming in off of a runner-up finish at the U.S. Open where he shot under par on both weekend rounds, I would be feeling pretty confident about where his game is and where his game is heading, right? The fact that he's coming in off of 2 brutal missed putts, it would be kind of the only need for anybody to second guess him. But his history at this event is pretty good. He won it last year. He is also like a generational week before majors player. He did it this year at the Wells Fargo, winning the week before the PGA Championship. He was 3rd the week before the Masters at the Valero. So like, for whatever reason, when it's the week before a major, Rory always turns it on, and he always turns it on when he's in the British Isles as well. I think he's a great play in DFS and a great pick to win. And I feel the same way about Xander Schauffele. He won here 2 years ago, was not great in his defense last year, but you think about what makes someone perform well at this course. It's being a lead off the tee, being good enough on approach and around the green, and then being a good putter. And I kind of would take Xander's putter over Rory's putter probably 9 times out of 10. So I do think that Xander is in pretty good shape as well. I have no problem playing either of them in DFS formats this week. And like I said, I do think you can fit both. When I set up my optimizer this week, which, by the way, quick point when it comes to my DFS lineups, I always hand build between 5 and 8 lineups. That's generally the amount that I like to hand build, where I can kind of hand pick what I want for all of them. And then I use an optimizer for 220 maxes. And so when I do my optimizer this week, what I'm probably going to do is set a minimum exposure of about 40% to both Rory and Xander. So that way I end up with some Rory lineups, some Xander lineups, some Rory and Xander lineups, and some neither Rory nor Xander lineups as a part of that. Now, Ludwig Oberg is a great pivot if you are not going with McIlroy or Schauffele. Reason why? Think about what we talked about. We want a good driver. We want a good putter this week. What are Ludwig Oberg's 2 best attributes? His driving, which is both as long as Rory McIlroy's and as accurate as Collin Morikawa's, and then his putting, which is one of the best in the field, almost up there with the likes of Denny McCarthy in terms of his general strokes gained putting baseline. So like, you're getting the best components of some of the best in the world in Ludwig. It's only a matter of time before he breaks through for another victory on the PGA Tour. I think this would be a great spot for him just in terms of what he brings to the table with his game. Now, Collin Morikawa is actually going to be a fade for me this week. I generally don't like Collin Morikawa in bad weather, and in Scotland, I think you can end up with quite bad weather just in general at any time. Somebody might counter argue me like, but Mike, he won the Open Championship in 2021, in which I would ask, like, did you watch that Open Championship? That was some of the most docile weather I've ever seen for an Open Championship ever. He won it when the sun was out. How many times for an Open Championship is the sun out? Genuinely think back in your memory to when you were watching an Open Championship on TV and the sun was out when the trophy was being handed. Not very often. So, I don't really like Collin in bad weather spots, and I think that there's a chance that this could turn into a bad weather spot. However, his strokes gain numbers, they're great. There's no holes to nitpick. I just don't really think he's a good fit for the course. He's only played this course once, and he has missed the cut in that appearance. Now, Tommy Fleetwood is going to be the guy that everybody's betting and everybody's playing this week. I think he's going to come in with the 3rd highest ownership in the field in DFS behind Rory and Xander. He's the best overall player at this course in the last 5 years. He's got a great links record. He's got great form with his approach play coming in, and he's generally a pretty good putter, and it hasn't really been popping all that much lately. So you feel like he's kind of due for some positive putting regression. It's a great stat profile, for being honest. But like, here's my concern. It kind of feels like when everybody wants Tommy Fleetwood to succeed, he's notoriously never won on American soil. When everybody wants and expects him to succeed, he doesn't. And this week, I think everybody is wanting and expecting him to succeed. He came out this morning on Monday morning as a 28-1 player on the betting boards, and he was quickly bet down to 22. And Bet365 thought they were going to be slick. they did an odds boost where you could get him from 22 to 25 to 1 and bet him outright to win. And to me, that just seems like they're trying to make it as attractive as possible to bet Tommy Fleetwood. It kind of seems like they're trying to bait people into betting Tommy Fleetwood. So as good of a course fit as he is, as good of a play as he is, I think I'm probably going to be slightly under the field in DFS. I'm going to be playing him, but not at super high ownership. And I'm probably not going to be taking him outright to win this tournament. Now, Victor Hovland is going to be the pivot right below him. I don't think anybody's going to play Victor Hovland in DFS, but he has a sneaky good record on links courses. And part of the reason why is because the worst aspect of his game is his around the green play and his chipping. And at links courses, he has an option to putt from off the green. So he doesn't have to use the worst part of his game, right? He's never finished worse than 15th at the Open Championship. Decent history at this event. His game is trending in the right direction. He had one bad round, which derailed him at the U.S. Open, but was pretty good at the Travelers the next week. Hasn't played since then. I like Victor this week. I think that he's a really solid pivot off of the high expected ownership of Tommy Fleetwood. Now, I really do like Tom Kim also. So, like I said earlier in the summer, I think I've said this about 3 guys in the summer, that I think before the summer is over, Tom Kim, Akshay Bhatia, and Tony Finau are going to win a tournament. And unfortunately, he's the only one of them in the field this week. So Akshay and Tony, clock's ticking. But anyway, he's coming in elite recent approach form. He's one of the best approach players in this field recently. He's also got elite form at this event, T6 and a solo third in the last 2 years. It was really his coming out party, that third place finish in 2022 when Xander Schauffele won it. That was back when he was being known as Ju Young, aka JH Kim, as opposed to Tom. So I think Tom checks off a lot of boxes. I like him a lot this week. He's going to be a guy who I play a ton in DFS. Hideki Matsuyama is going to be a fade for me, though. I just think that when you look at the best attributes of Hideki's golf game, his approach play and his around the green play, he's not going to get to use them a whole lot this week because really this course is going to place an emphasis on off the tee play and putting, which are not exactly his strengths. So Hideki is largely going to be a fade for me at 9,400. Minwoo Lee is a former winner at this event that checks off a lot of boxes. We talk about the driver putter model. Well, that's Minwoo Lee. He's a great driver of the golf ball, great putter. His recent form, he hasn't finished worse than 26th since the Valspar Championship back in March. That's pretty darn impressive. And at a course that he's familiar with, a course that his game suits really well. He did win this event when it was at his easiest. When the event was at its easiest, very docile conditions that week. So I do think that if this is a week where it's going to be, the wind dying down, I think that would be the spot that I would want to target Minwoo as opposed to like a rainy and windy Scottish Open. Now, heading down to the 9 and 8K range, the top of the 8K range and the bottom of the 9K range, to me, are like the most tough to predict golfers in the field. Matt Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors, Justin Thomas, Brian Harman, Sung Jae In. So Fitzpatrick, pretty good links record, always plays here. Only one missed cut in 5 tries. Recent game, all over the place. Can't figure out a pattern. Don't know what to do with him. Corey Connors, generally good off the tee player, generally good approach player, generally horrible putter, has been putting really well, and it hasn't really translated into any top 5 finishes. So I just don't know what to make of it. He's going to need everything to show up this week if he wants to pay off that price tag. Justin Thomas, T5 at the Travelers, his best finish of the year. Historically poor links player. Pass, in my opinion. Brian Harman, historically good links player. Historically good record at the Open Championship and historically good record in terms of his recent form. I shouldn't have said historically there, but his recent form is pretty good. Also, I don't like him at courses where driving distance is emphasized, though. So to me, he kind of doesn't check off one big box that we're looking for. Sung Jae In has been like the weak field hunter this year. He's missed the cut in all 3 majors, but he's had a myriad of good finishes in between them, all against weaker fields. This field's pretty strong. His record in windy conditions is pretty good, but his record at links courses is pretty bad. So I don't really know what to make of Sung Jae at all either. What I do know what to make of, though, is Aaron Rai. Aaron Rai, to me, is going to be one of the chalkiest plays on the DFS board this week. I think he's a very sensible bet to win this tournament, or a bet to come in top 10 or top 20 for this tournament. I might be firing Aaron Rai top 20 this week, in all honesty. He's coming in playing the best golf of his career. His approach play has been really, really good. His putting has been really, really good. Traditionally, he's been like the anti-Tony Finau, where Tony Finau is really long off the tee, is generally good off the tee. Aaron Rai is generally really accurate, but he's still really good off the tee. And they're both generally really good approach players and generally really poor putters. And then when Finau started putting well in 2022, he started winning events. When he started putting well this year, he started popping up in, top 5 in events. Aaron Rai is the same way. He started putting very well in the last few months, and it's caused him to play really well and have a lot of really good finishes. Now he's coming to a course that he's won at before back in 2020, and he finds himself at like his highest price for a field of this caliber that I've ever seen in DFS for Aaron Rai. So I think he's going to be supremely highly owned. I will be playing some of him, but not a lot of him in DFS. I would rather bet him to come top 10 or top 20 than to play him at high ownership in DFS. So if Rai is going to be highly owned, Syed Theegala is going to be very lowly owned, but I love this fit for Theegala. Think about what we've been talking about, driver putter, right? What are the two things he does really well? Drive, putt, boom, Syed Theegala, there we go. He has very little links record to speak of, but I just think his game fits what we're looking for very well. And if he ends up being a good links golfer, then he ends up being a good links golfer. Wyndham Clark is the only guy I have bet so far at this tournament. By the time I recorded the podcast last Monday night, I'd already had a bet on Davis Thompson and Eric Cole to win that golf tournament. Wyndham Clark is the only one that I bet for this one. I think that his betting number, it being about 50-1, is very disrespectful to the quality of player that he is. And he was being punished for very poor form in the months of March, April, and May. But now he's back, and his approach play at the Travelers was great. You think about what this course emphasizes, driver putter. Well, what are the two things he does well? Drive it and putt it. He has a win at Quail Hollow, which is one of my comp courses. He has a win at Pebble Beach, which could be described as a links course. Was very windy and rainy over those 3 days this year at Pebble Beach. So I think he checks off a lot of boxes. He's back-to-back top 25s at this event. And I think he's at a better point in his career now than he was in either of those two times. So really think Wyndham Clark is a great pick this week. Jordan Spieth is interesting. I don't think anybody's going to play him in DFS. T26 at the John Deere was kind of if I can think of a word to describe it, just right? But think about what the course is emphasizing, driving and putting. Think about what he's doing well right now, driving and putting. And Jordan Spieth is always dangerous at links courses. He's always dangerous at Open Championships. I don't mind playing him in DFS when there's going to be literally nobody else that is going to play him. All right, that does it for the top of the board. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then let's identify some values. All right, so heading down the board and looking at some values. Davis Thompson, he won for us last week, cashed the outright, yes. But, tip of the cap, I will see you on down the road, my friend. Not really interested in playing him at a links course where he has very minimal history, coming off of the joy and emotional high of winning your first PGA Tour event. I'll catch back up with you some other time. Hopefully he plays decent this week, so that way I can use him at the Open Championship, but just not really looking to play him coming off that win. I'll let everybody else chase that. However, Robert McIntyre right below him. It's one of my favorite clicks of the week. He's a Scotland native. If there were to be a Scotsman who were to win this tournament, it would be Robert McIntyre. He almost pulled it off last year as a runner-up to Rory McIlroy. Great track record in the British Isles. Great track record. Former DP World Tour player on links golf courses that they play on the DP World Tour. And the two best clubs in his bag are his driver and his putter. So just checks off all the boxes. Love Robert McIntyre at 7,800. Next guy that I really like is Thomas Dietrich at 7,200. Look, again, you think about the formula, right? Driver, putter. What are the two things Dietrich does well? Driver, putter. He's also a historically good wind player. Very good finish at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am T4 earlier this year. And he's been pretty good at the Scottish Open, 42nd and 10th in each of the last 2 years. So I really do think Dietrich checks off a lot of boxes. 7,200, certainly a very affordable price tag for Dietrich. Ryan Fox is what I want to talk about as well. So he was known as a links specialist on the DP World Tour before he came over and started playing on the PGA Tour. And you think about what he does well, again, right? I don't want to sound like a broken record, but take a guess at what the two best clubs in his bag are. It's the two that we've been talking about. And he's a guy who hits the ball a country mile. He's great in firm and fast conditions. And I just think that he's a guy that you need to look out for this week. This is the type of event that he could really excel at. And he's only $7,100. Now, there are a lot of primarily DP World Tour players that are filling up the bottom half of this board. We're going to try our best to talk about the ones that I think are the most notable coming into this week. The two coming in with the best recent form are Tom McKibben, who almost rallied to win the Italian Open 2 weeks ago. Tom McKibben, super green stat profile too, pretty much gains with the entire bag, but coming in with great recent form. The other one coming in with great recent form is going to be Sebastian Soderberg, who coughed up like an 8-stroke lead at the Scandinavian Mixed a few weeks back, and then withdrew from the KLM Open 2 weeks ago. But I do believe he is back and healthy for this event. But he had just been racking up top 10 finishes on the DPA or the DP World Tour this season. I think he's got the chops to play with the likes of this field. Not a bad option. And then Jordan L. Smith, we mentioned already, models really well. Generally been pretty good at these crossover type events. And then kind of like a team no putt guy for the DP World Tour. Great ball striker, just doesn't really seem to have it with the putter oftentimes. But if it does pop, that is a term that he could absolutely play very well at. Now, other than that, Matthew Pavone is a guy we got to talk about. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you kind of know where I'm going with this. He's got 2 good clubs in his bag. I'll leave you to figure out which 2 they are. And at courses that emphasize those 2 clubs, he's going to play well. At Pebble Beach, windy, rainy links type course, finished 3rd earlier this year. U.S. Open course where, look at the top of the leaderboard, there was Rory McIlroy, there was Bryson DeChambeau, there was Xander Schauffele. The driver and the putter were the 2 most important clubs in the bag. Finishes in 5th, follows it up with a T16 at the Travelers. I think Matthew Pavone might be starting to ascend back to where we thought he was at the start of this PGA Tour season. Now, Ben Griffin has been great at the comp courses, and he's historically a great putter. And he was 25th here last year. So I kind of think that this is a pretty good spot for Ben Griffin. $6,600 is a very cheap price tag, definitely a guy that I'm going to be going to in DFS formats. And then Seamus Power is a guy that he was a part of our core last week. Played a lot of him in DFS. He was in my top 20 parlay. And his approach play last week was really, really good. So I'm not going to go away from it. He doesn't exactly fit the archetype of what I'm looking for, but he is from Ireland, so he should have experience playing links golf. And that recent approach form is nothing to sneeze at. $6,400 on DraftKings is a super affordable price tag for Seamus Power. Now, we've talked about the driver putter model, right? Well, who are the guys in the $6,000 range that, kind of fit that description? Victor Perez, $6,300. Taylor Moore, $6,100. They've played well at the comp courses that we have. You look at their strokes gain data, those are the 2 best clubs in their bag. Those would be guys I would be looking at if you are a true believer in the driver putter model like we've been talking about. Cam Davis can also be that. He's got a ton of upside like he had when he won the Rocket Mortgage. The putter doesn't always show up, but he just absolutely mashes the golf ball off the tee, hits it a mile. So he's another guy that I would be looking at as well. He will definitely make my player pool in DFS. I also really like Doug Yim. He was 16th here 2 years ago. He was actually in my best DFS lineup that week. I had Xander, I had Kitayama, I had Doug Yim. It was a very good DFS week that week. And so I definitely think that Yim is going to be a guy that I could go back to. He has gained over 1 stroke per round on approach in 3 straight tournaments. And 2 of those, he missed the cut. So his approach play has been really good. He just needs the putter to be good. And at the start of this calendar year, it was really good when he was rattling off top 20 finishes. And so I do think that if the putter can show up one more time for old Doug Yim, then this could be a really good place for him to get back at. Now, Andrew Novak is also coming in with incredibly good recent form. The irons have been spectacular. He's putted very well in the last 2 events. No problem going back to Andrew Novak at only $6,200. In the 5K range, there's really just kind of looking to check a few boxes. Oh, before I go all the way to the 5K range, Guido Migliozzi, young Italian guy, won the KLM Open a few weeks back. Super talented, has played well on the DP World Tour this season. Wouldn't mind giving him a shot. But in the 5K range, in terms of recent form, Max Grazerman and Julien Guerrier are coming in with the best recent form. If you're looking for that type of player, you got Max Grazerman on the American side, Julien Guerrier on DP World Tour side. They're coming in with good recent form. In terms of the driver putter model, Romain Langasque, I hope that's how it's pronounced. I had French when I was in high school for 4 years. I'm hoping that my French is serving me well there. He fits the driver putter model. He's played pretty well in the DP World Tour this season. Hits the ball a mile off the tee. No problem with him at 5,800. And then there are a few links specialists from the DP World Tour that generally really only show up when they're playing links golf courses, and that is Callum Hill, Matthew Southgate, and Alexander Bjork. Those are your 3 link specialists. Those are guys that I feel like every year they're at the Open Championship. They're priced in like the minimum price range. I play them in my DFS lineups. They give you a made cut, maybe like a T42, something like that. But I had no problem going back to them here at this event. No problem going back to them next week at another links course either. All right, so that does it for all the value plays that we're looking at. Now let's go ahead and talk one and done. And so the best advice that I can give for one and done contest this week is to count up how many quote unquote big dogs that you have left. What I mean by that is how many guys that when you get to the end of the one and done season, you're going to be like, man, I need to use him somewhere. No matter where it is, I need to use that guy in my lineups, right? Because there are 4 more big dog events. There is this week at the Scottish Open. There is next week at the Open Championship. Then there is the 2 FedEx Cup playoff events, the FedEx St. Jude and the BMW Championship, right? So this week you got the Scottish Open. Obviously, Scotty's not here. Finau, Bhatia, Lowry are not here either, if you're wondering about those guys. And then the Open Championship, you can use live guys at that event. And then the FedEx Cup playoffs, we've got a ton of course history to bank off of for the FedEx St. Jude. No course history to bank off of for the BMW Championship. So again, you need to be counting up how many guys you have left and whether or not you can use one this week. So for instance, in this entry that I'm looking at right here, I have used Scotty, I've used Rory, I have used Xander, I have used Victor, I have used Hideki, Sahith, and Max. I still have remaining Wyndham, Ludwig, Morikawa, Fleetwood, Tom Kim, right? Tom Kim will probably play at the Wyndham. That would be where I can use Tom Kim, right? Just like I think I have Finau left, I can probably use Finau at the 3M Open. So I'm not stressing about those guys, but like given how many of the other guys I have left, I might want to use one this week so that way I don't get left out in the cold with one of those guys on my bench for the entirety of the season. And the best part is if you still have any of these guys left, they're going to be less available in your leagues. And so you're going to get them at lower ownership with more leverage on them if they do in fact play well this week. Now, this is not an elevated event, so this is not in a week where you can just get one winner and instantly jump right back up to the top of the leaderboard. But this is an event where you can play a guy with a ton of leverage because you're playing somebody who not a lot of players have remaining in their entry, aka a lot of guys have used already in their entry, right? So if you are sitting there thinking, well, dang, Mike, you're talking about how many big dogs you have left. I've used all these guys. What do I do? Well, to me, there's a few really logical plays this week. Tommy Fleetwood is one of them. Tom Kim is another. Benny On, Minwoo Lee, I don't think are poor plays this week, but I do think the 2 most sensible plays this week are Robert McIntyre and Aaron Rai. Robert McIntyre, runner-up last year, winner on the PGA Tour this season. Aaron Rai coming in with outstanding recent form, won this event 4 years ago. Those are the 2 guys that if you don't have any big guns left, those are the 2 guys you can go with and feel pretty good. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, dang, well, I'm near the bottom of the board and I need to find a way to get different, right? So, you try to do that with one of your big dogs, but if not, you got Thomas Dietrich, you got Ryan Fox that you can do that with. And those would be 2 guys that you could very easily get different with that should fit this course pretty well. So anyway, back to the original conundrum. For this entry, I need to use one of my guys this week, right? Because if not, I'm going to get to the end of the season and these guys are still going to be available and I'm going to be leaving money on the table. So which one of them do I think fits the course best this week? Well, we've already talked about how Morikawa is largely a favorite or largely a fade for me, excuse me. And so Morikawa is a fade. That leaves it between Wyndham and Ludwig. I think both of them are pretty good plays. I'm going to go ahead and go with Wyndham right here, knowing that he has good history at this event, knowing that I'm probably not going to want to use him next week at the Open Championship, and knowing that he is a guy that I'm going to want to use in my one and done entry. So Wyndham Clark is going to be the one and done pick that I am picking here on the show. I need to jump some spots if I want to get in the money in this one. I'm not in terrible shape to do so, though, given that I've still got some good players left and still got a few events left that I can gain a ton of money back. All right, so That is going to do it here for this episode. That is everything that you need to know about the 2024 Scottish Open in about 45 minutes. Hopefully, we're able to give you guys plenty of good information that is going to help you pick some winners this week, whether you're playing DFS, betting, or one and done. Now, please do me a favor. If we helped you in any way, please hit the like button. I really do appreciate it when you guys do that. If you're listening on audio, please rate and review the podcast. I cannot stress enough how much those help me, y'all, because what it does is it bumps the video up, bumps the podcast up in searches. The more reviews, the more likes that it has. So it helps new people find the videos and find the audio and find the channel and just grow the community, right? That's what we're about here. Is I love talking DFS, love talking betting with you guys. So I want to do it with as many people as possible. And so if there's any other way I can help you, there's a few ways you can get that. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks, join the Fantasy Corner Discord. You can also get access to the articles on the Patreon with the core for every single week of DFS, with the top 10 from the model and with the full write-up. But that's pretty much all we got this week, guys. Like I said, hopefully we're able to give you plenty of good information to help pick the winners. Join us the rest of the week because we're going to be talking about the ISCO. We're going to be talking about Live Andalusia. We're going to be talking about the Pup Cup on Underdog, and we're going to be talking about the Open Championship. So come on back for the rest of this week. But thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you guys next time.